Leaders are accountable. You lead by example, not by nagging. Pleaser parents think that children are happier when they're given choices all the time. Actually, it's the opposite. Be crazy and fun when you're playing with them, or pretty much all the time. But as soon as they act out, you get real quiet and real serious and real boring. It's like when my son was in grade 2, his teacher said to him, "Why are you so nice?" And he looked up at her, "Mommy makes us be nice." Yeah, be nice and life will be great. Now, a leader does what makes everyone happy. A bossy person only does what makes them happy. That's the difference between a leader and a bossy person. Welcome to the BratBusters Parenting Podcast. My name's Lisa Bunnage. I'm a parenting coach. I'm a mom. I'm also a grandmother.
And I'm Amy Bunnage, Lisa's daughter, and I handle the marketing and planning here at BratBusters. While I don't have kids, each episode will dive into parenting topics and Lisa will answer your questions. Let's get started.
We're back. Lisa and Amy, mother-daughter duo. Now, what are we talking about today?
Today is going to be your advice for new parents.
Not big on this topic. The reason is I don't have a lot of advice because I don't know you. I don't know what you're going to come up against. I don't know what you're going to want to do with your babies. Are you going to be traveling a lot? Or do you expect your baby to not make any difference in your life whatsoever? I remember years ago, I was on a plane and someone beside me, they had a brand new baby. And I wasn't a mom yet, I don't think. Anyway, so they said, well, we decided when we got pregnant, we weren't going to let this kid change our lives at all. They were world travelers. I think they were she looked like a model. He was a photographer. It was something like that. So this baby wasn't going to change their lives at all. Now, this was a new baby. I remember thinking, I would like to meet up with them again in 2 years. Their expectations. And because I knew a lot about kids, and I asked them questions. I said, so what about when they're running around they'll just have to learn to sit in a seat. And they may have a real easy one who will do that. But I remember, new parents don't have a lot of expectations. Just go with the flow. That's my best advice. Go with the flow. Is that good advice?
I think that's good advice. I think that was definitely one of my things. It was funny because I did gymnastics with toddlers. For context, I couldn't even do a somersault, but for some reason I was a gymnastics coach just because I was actually decent with kids. I think
very good with kids, actually. She didn't take any crap and she was lots of fun. And that's what I do.
I think that's why they kept me in, even though I was horrible.
And the parents loved her and the kids loved her. So that's a big part of it, because getting toddlers to turn up to gymnastics with a teacher that they don't like is really difficult. So they all liked her. That's why they kept her in, because she really was bad at it. She didn't know anything about gymnastics.
But I will say, I was listening to a podcast and they were like, oh my gosh, we just thought that we could be working and rock this little baby crib without foot and it would all be good and all. And they were laughing and laughing. And I was like, you mean that isn't what happens?
She told me about that. And she says that to her was normal. She thought that would be normal. Now, she listens to me talk about parenting all the time, but we don't talk a lot about baby stuff.
We don't.
No, because I teach the connection, the discipline, a lot of discipline, but a lot of connection, playing and all that. And with babies, it's more just keeping them alive and healthy and all that. So it's more almost medical with babies. But I will say, and this is to each his own, you do what you want to do. But when my babies cried, I picked them up. And I remember a friend once saying to me, and when I could, if I was hanging out laundry or something, I'd let them cry a bit. But a friend said to me, oh, you're going to spoil her with love. And I thought, can you do that with a baby? I didn't say anything, but I thought, yeah, that's okay. I don't mind spoiling my babies with love. So yeah, if you're able to, and if you want to do that, pick them up every time they cry.
Okay. We do have quite a few questions. And again, these questions are more in the early toddler years or the right before, just because that's what new parents are heading into. Do you have anything else you want to add before we get into them?
Not yet, because I don't know what the questions are going to be. So it might come up in the questions. So let's just let them roll.
And if you'd like to submit a question, you can do so at bratbusters.com and then it's /podcast-questions. Or just go to BratBusters and you'll find it. Okay, so the first question is Sam from the United States. New parent here. How do I not fall into the pleaser parent? Into that Okay, we're going to skip that question. Okay. First question.
Well, now I want to know.
I just think it was incorrectly worded. It says pleasure parent.
Pleaser parent. Well, I mean the pleaser parent. Okay, well, I want to talk about that, because the pleaser parent is when you try and make everything easy for them, basically. And you go in and try and save the day when they're at school and something isn't going right. You go running in, try to get everyone to mold around your child's wants and needs. It's a horrible thing to do to a child because they grow up very self-entitled and they don't deal well with problems because you're always trying to solve them for them. Also, the pleaser parent style might work if you've got a really easy kid and they don't cause you any problems, but down the road, it generally backfires. The pleaser parents are the most likely ones to lose it and yell because it doesn't work. Okay. Children love, crave, and need leadership. A leader guides them into being the best that they can be, or the best that they, the happiest. You bring out the best in them. They like themselves the most when they're with a leader. With a pleaser, they tend to have very low self-esteem because they got nothing to be proud of. You're not giving them anything to be proud of. You're trying to make everything easy. Those are also the parents that will say to me, how do we make chores fun? How do we make homework fun? You don't. You want kids to learn how to do the tough stuff too. You want them to have fortitude. You want them to have self-discipline. But yeah, it's a disaster. So just think about it that way, that you're going to raise self-entitled snowflakes with mental health issues. And that'll drive you away from that whole style. It's a disaster. You'll notice that parents or people who talk about that don't usually have older kids. It is a total disaster down the road. So yeah, maybe with little ones, you might hear about it more, but you talk to those same parents 10 years down the road, it's usually a different story.
Yeah. How do you balance? So someone asked a question just on a comment. How do you balance it? Because you always say you lead with fun, but then you're like, well, not everything's going to be fun. So where is that balance?
You ask the best questions.
No, this wasn't me. This was someone in the comments.
Oh, then you don't ask very good questions. That was someone else. Lead with fun. Well, because when you are playing with kids, be as goofy and crazy and lunatic. Like I used to chase my kids around the house with underpants on my head all the time when I did the laundry. Not when I was taking them off at the end of the night. It was when I was doing laundry. It was the clean ones, but I just want to clarify that. And but yeah, be crazy. They love that stuff. It pulls them in. They're drawn to an adult who doesn't mind making a fool out of themselves for their benefit, to play with them, to connect with them. But if my kids, let's say I'm chasing my kids, I was the panty monster. So I got underpants on my head and I'm chasing the kids around the house. If they had ever acted out, I would have stopped dead in my tracks right away, no warning, taken the underpants off my head and said, we'll try again tomorrow. They wouldn't have said, sorry, please, because they knew they messed up. They took their medicine, basically. They knew that they would have caused that. I wouldn't have done it that way. So yeah, that's how you balance it out. Be crazy and fun when you're playing with them, or pretty much all the time. You can just be chatting with them in the car, having fun. But as soon as they act out, you get real quiet and real serious and real boring.
And then that balance of like, but you're saying the chores aren't meant to be fun.
No, of course not. You want them to learn how to do the hard stuff. Like if my kids, let's say they had some chores that they hadn't done. I wouldn't say anything because I don't like nagging. So I wanted self-disciplining kids. So let's say they had chores that they hadn't finished and they said to me, can we watch TV? I would say, sure, as soon as you finish your chores. And they'd go, oh, sorry, Mom. They'd do their chores and then they could watch TV. So what they learned eventually was you got to do the hard stuff before you get the fun stuff. So they learned to work for the fun stuff, which is a great way to look at life, basically. Both my kids are phenomenal workers. And just really self-disciplined and really hard workers. And I think that's part of it. I taught them, you got to earn the fun stuff. You got to do what you need to do before you can do what you want to do. They learned that from the time they were about 3 to 4 years old, I would say. Yeah. Like if they wanted a cookie, they got to the point where they would never ask for it until they knew they'd done what they needed to do. They wouldn't even have asked. Can we go outside? That wouldn't have happened if they had not done their homework or chores or whatever needed to be done.
Yeah, it didn't even feel like an option.
Well, they didn't think about it. It was just, you got to do what you need to do before you can do what you want to do. Just, there was no thought process in it. It was just became a habit, which is the best thing. And plus, I never told them that really. Like I never remember really telling them what to do. I would just say, sure, you can watch TV or go outside as soon as you've finished your homework. Oh, okay. And there was no arguing. I have no memory of ever telling my kids to get ready for school, do their homework, or go to bed. They just knew this, you just got to do it. There was no questioning it. Now, from your perspective, why is that? Like I always talk about it from my perspective, but as my kid, why did I never have to nag you or tell you what to do?
I know I'm thinking about it because I'm thinking back to my childhood and I don't really remember you ever saying you need to do this because blah, blah, blah. Like,
never. She's got her thinking cap on. She's got her knuckles underneath her chin and she's like really putting some thought into it. Neither one of us can really figure out why it worked, but it just did.
It just felt like that's how life was.
And I was watching them too. I knew if they hadn't done their homework, I knew they'd forgotten about it. So this is when they were little and they had stuff to do. And I'd just wait and wait and wait. Mom, can we please blah, blah? Sure, as soon as you've done your homework. I would just wait rather than nag them or tell them. I didn't want to be micromanaging them. I wanted them to be self-disciplined. That's why they were, because I waited till they wanted something and then I used it as leverage, but not in a bad way. Well, no, you can't have a cookie because you haven't even done your homework. I would never say anything like that. I said, sure you can, sweetie, as soon as you've done your homework. Oh, right. That's why there was no pushback. It's one of the reasons. There's other stuff there.
Yeah, I guess it didn't feel like you against us. It felt like us as a team.
We were a team.
Whereas I hear a lot of even my friends, it felt like it was them against their parents.
No, there was none of that. I was accountable too. I was always in trouble. I was always promising stuff. I promise I'll get that done. Mom, you forgot that. Oh, drats. And then I'd have to make amends. So yeah, there was no us. There was no me against them ever. It was a team. You're right. It was a team because I was accountable too. That's a leader. Leaders are accountable. You lead by example, not by nagging.
Okay. Next question is Philippa from New Zealand. My 13-month-old is obsessed with pulling hair and biting other kids and adults. How do I teach him not to?
Well, you don't teach him not to, you just stop it. Like what I mean by that is he's not really learning aside from consistent corrective action. So every time he goes to grab for hair, you grab his hand right away and don't allow him to do it. Once he gets the feeling of hair between his fingers, it's harder to train them out of it, but you know he's going to do it now. So you intervene before he even does it. So you maybe grab his hands right away. And if he's going for it, and then you just say no, very quietly. He's still just a baby, okay? He'll eventually stop doing it because he won't be able to do it. He won't know why he's not doing it. He just won't be able to do it because you're intervening. You're not teaching them great lessons at that age. He's still a baby. They're a baby till they're about 15, 16 months. In my view, that's just the way I've done it. That's the way I deal with babies.
Okay. Christine from the United States. So I have a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. Had you ever asked your toddlers questions that had the opportunity of no? So for example, do you want your milk? Do you not like your food?
No, I don't remember talking like that. That's interesting. I would have just said, oh, here's your milk. And then they can drink it or not. Or I might say, if they're not drinking, I might say, oh, y'all done? And pull it away. And then if they wanted it back, if they were 2, they had to say, please. But I was more, here it is. I never asked them to do anything. That's where you get resistance. Here's your milk. Okay, we're getting in the car seat now. Okay, we're getting dressed. Not, do you want to get dressed? Do you want to wear this? I didn't expect them to lead their own lives at that age. And that's sort of what you're asking. Giving them control where they don't need it. When I was playing with my kids, they had a lot of control because play is fun. That's their love language. So I wanted them to feel like they sort of had control over me when we were playing. And we did, whatever they were doing, I'd copy it. And they just love that. Kids love it when you mimic them, especially when they're really little. So, but yeah, I don't remember talking like that. Do you not want your milk? You're giving them options. Chances are they're going to say no. They're going to argue with you. You're handing them an argument on a silver platter, basically. I didn't do that. So here's your milk. Here's your lunch. If they didn't want to eat it, I'd say, fine. Okay, we're all done.
So more statements rather than questions.
Perfect way of putting it. Yeah. That's that pleaser parent style. It's giving them options. What do you want to wear today? You're giving them options over stuff that has to be done. They have to be dressed. They have to eat. You're giving them options and choices where they aren't needed, or where it's inappropriate. Do you want to get in the car seat or not? Stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I just say, okay, lunchtime, here's your lunch. Statements. It's a very good way of putting it. Why do you look so shocked?
No. I'm thinking, does that change as they get older?
No, they might just say, Mom, can we have such and such for lunch? I'd say, sure. They would offer. They would ask, can we have something? But they never would have been rude or anything, because I would just say, okay, well, we're all done. But I did cook around their taste buds. But yeah, don't give them choices where they're not necessary. If it's something that has to happen, they don't need them. I think that pleaser parents think that children are happier when they're given choices all the time. Actually, it's the opposite. It does shift and change later when they're able to make responsible choices. But at 1 and 2 and 3 years old, they're not really making responsible choices yet. So, but yeah, if my kids really felt strongly about something, they would have said, Mommy, can we please? I'd say, sure. I think that's why they never fought me really, because they knew if it was important to them, I listened and I would say, sure, okay, well, let's do something else then. But if they were disrespectful, no way. No way. Yeah, if they had been rude or anything, I wouldn't have said sure. Nope.
Yeah, you drew a pretty hard and fast line with that.
Oh, they knew. They knew. It's like when my son was in grade 2, his teacher said to him, "Why are you so nice?" And he looked up at her, "Mommy makes us be nice." Yeah, be nice and life will be great. I used to tell them, if you're good, life is good. If your bad, life ain't so good, I'll make sure of it because that's my job. I'm your mom. So I made sure they leaned into being nice because everything was great. We were happy. But if they weren't, there was a lesson.
Yeah,
for sure. I wanted nice kids because I wanted them. I didn't want my kids to ever go out in public where people would roll their eyes at them. I didn't want my kids to ever be the kid in the class that the teacher didn't like. I didn't want my kid to be the one that ever acted out anywhere. Like I wanted that for them. I wanted them to be proud of who they were. I didn't want them to go out and to be that kid where everyone dreads them turning up. Because I knew a lot of kids like that. I always felt sorry for them because it wasn't their fault. They just didn't have a leader as a parent. So yeah, I wanted them to be liked. I wanted them to be likable. I wanted them to be nice.
Do you find that kids who like have too many question-based like responses like that, do they almost feel lost?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. That's why they're fighting so much. You know what they're fighting for? Your leadership. Why are you asking me what I want all the time? Just take charge for God's sake. That's what they're doing. I know you may find that hard to believe. The reason I know that for a fact is I've worked with hundreds of kids and they love it when you're a leader. They just love it. It just relaxes them. Because it's not important stuff anyway. You don't need to decide what they're going to wear. But also, if they like something, I'll give you a good example of this. My son had a real problem with skin sensitivity. He didn't like labels, and I made all their clothes. And I remember once I bought him some underwear because he was going to be changing for swim classes at school. So I actually bought him some underpants, and I laid them out on the bed, and they had dinosaurs on them. And I thought, because I made all his underpants and all his clothes. So he was in grade 1, I think. So anyway, I laid out these underpants on his bed. When he came home from school, he saw them. Imagine a 5-year-old kid going, wow, he sees new underpants. I thought it was the dinosaur. He said, wow, they've got a tag. He was so excited that he had underpants with a tag because none of his clothes had tags in them. Anyway, the funny part was he couldn't handle it because they were scratching his back. So I cut the tag off because I respected that, right? That wasn't his choice. That was something that was annoying to him. And he was very polite about it. He says, Mom, it's itchy. It's itchy. And I said, okay, I'll cut it out. Well, of course, when you cut it, there's still that fabric chewing into his back. I had to rip out the whole seam and re-sew it up. And then I made all his underpants again after that. But yeah, so that's not a choice so much as I'm doing what makes them happy, like what makes them comfortable and happy. And arguing with me did not make anyone happy. So, but I pick my battles. Like if it's something like that, I'm going to fix it. If he was uncomfortable, I'm fixing that for you. I'm your mom. I'm going to fix that.
Yeah, you've made comments before that leaders, they still make the best choices for the kids. Like it's just because you're making the choices doesn't mean it has to be stuff that they would not like.
But good point. Yeah. Yeah, good point. It was really good. But if they had a preference, like if they like, Mom, I really don't like those pants, I would have got rid of those pants and made them something new. Or, I wanted them to like what they were wearing. But I knew what they liked and I knew what was important to them. If it was really important to them, they would politely ask me. That's the difference. They would say, Mommy, I really don't like those. And I'd say, oh, okay, why is that? And because of this and that. And I'd say, oh, okay, well, then we'll just give those away and we'll make you some new ones. Or here's another pair you can wear. But they always, when they come at you respectfully like that, I'm very easygoing. Like, sure, yeah, sure, wear whatever you want. But if they'd come at me in a rude way, they'd get nothing they want. I made sure rudeness never paid off. They would have been going to school in a suit of armor or whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I made sure that being rude and disrespectful, because I knew how to get respect. I knew I earned it. So if they'd ever talked to me in a rude way, they wouldn't have got what they wanted. They knew that. They knew you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. But they get something with honey. That's the thing is I didn't want to be an authority. I didn't want to be in charge of everything they were doing. I wanted to give them autonomy. I wanted to give them choices in life, that stuff that mattered to them. I wanted to give them that, but they knew the way to get all that, the way to get respect from me was to be respectful. It was mutual. Did that sum it up?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about our dynamic with just like with restaurants. It's not like we go out to a restaurant and like I'm like, I'm picking the restaurant, I'm picking what you're eating. It's just like I'm more in charge. I'm not picking dishes that I don't think you're gonna like.
Well, that's as adults now. I'm a follower in my personal life, and I always was. With people I really like. Obviously, I'm not going to follow someone I don't. But yeah, I always prefer the follower role. And now that, and even as a teenager, you were still, I could see it. She's a leader. She wants to be in charge of everything, and I don't. So she would always be in charge of everything we did. So what do you want to do? Well, Mom, I was thinking we should go here and then there and then that time, and you can pick me up, and then you can go and do your own thing. You can go and relax and get coffee. Now, a leader does what makes everyone happy. A bossy person only does what makes them happy. That's the difference between a leader and a bossy person. Huge difference. We've all known bossy people in our lives. They're out for themselves. A leader is out for everybody. They want everybody. That's the difference. A leader wants everyone to be happy. A bossy person just wants them. They want what they want, when they want, and how they want it. They're the pains in the butts in this world. We all know someone bossy.
Okay,
or have known people bossy. I don't have any bossy people in my life anymore. It's wonderful. I'm old. I can do whatever I want. I'm only around people that make me happy now.
Okay, next question. So Jess from the United States. Our 18-month-old has consistently been attached to her father for the past 8 months. We have a hard time separating her from him when the nanny arrives and when mom or grandparents offer to take over. When does this phase show signs of being not normal and regressive? And what are some tactics we can use to help her with being okay with separating?
She's 18 months, and did she say she's always been like that, or was it
for
just
the last 8 months?
For the last 8 months. Okay. Generally it's a learned and a groomed behavior. That means that the dad probably holds her closer when she does that. It's subtle, but it encourages that trait. So when she's hanging on, and let's say he has to separate from her, and he gives her that extra little hug or something, it's psychological, but it makes a difference. I would be more, if I was him, I'd say, okay, the nanny's here. Off we go. Don't make goodbye a big deal. Don't do the extra hug. You've already hugged her enough, I'm sure. And then you say, okay, nanny's here. Bye. Have a good day. And you leave and run. Do it fast. But yeah, it's usually a groomed behavior. It takes time to do that. Usually it's groomed. Does that make sense?
Yes. Again, I don't know why I'm talking so much about gymnastics coaching today.
But she's getting over a cold. That's why she sounded all squeaky.
I know. I definitely.
Yes.
I'm not sound my finest here. But it reminds me, because I could see that with the kids. I could see the kids who maybe were a little bit more nervous, and like I think there's a difference where like I was just a shy kid anyways. But you definitely saw the kids who maybe were glomming onto their parents, but the parents were feeding it a little too much.
Well, you said you were a shy kid. Remember you went to that dance studio at 3 years old, and she was just standing there crying in the middle of the class. And what did I look like? Well, this is a podcast. If you're watching it, I won't even bother doing it, the facial expression. If she looked over at me, there would not have been one speck of sympathy. It would have been, you're all right. That's what my mother would have done too. You'll survive. Yeah. So she learned. She's very independent now, but I mean, she was very much a mummy's girl, and I never fed that at all. I'd say, you're all right. I paid for it. You're staying in that class. You'll survive. But I was right there. But every time she looked over at me, she cried a little bit less because she could see I wasn't tolerating it. See how you're feeding it, basically.
Yeah. And I wouldn't classify myself as shy anymore.
Oh, God, no. Jeez, oh, Lou.
Yeah.
Neither of my kids are shy.
Okay. The next question is Charlotte from the United Kingdom. Hi, my 20-month-old is really struggling with transitions at the moment, getting her from one area or activity to the next. Every time we move her to something new, she loves her bath, but getting her upstairs into the bath, she throws a fit. And then she wants to stay in the bath and has a fit when I take her out. Same with mealtime and anytime we go out anywhere. She won't even let me take her out of the cot. When she wakes up from the nap, she wants to stay there and tantrums if I move her. I'm not sure how to best implement the concept of consistent corrective actions in this situation. I have to just pick her up and move her to what we're doing next, but it's exhausting spending the day like this.
Okay.
Any advice would be appreciated.
Sorry, but yeah, you're doing it right. And it's not consistent corrective actions. It's just what I call follow through. Like let's say a good example of that is if you have to leave the park, and my son would have done this. He had tantrums. And if I said, we're leaving the park, and I'd give him a bit of warning, sometimes it would work. We're going to be leaving soon. Sometimes it would work. Other times I saw that look in his eye and I thought, he's going to have a tantrum. We have to leave. I just knew it. But I did the follow through. Okay, we're leaving now. Picked him up, kicking and screaming, and followed through with action. So you're doing it right, but there is no consequence. It's just follow through with what you said you were going to do. A little bit of warning might help, but it's been my experience that it doesn't. Usually it doesn't. Not when they're that little. As they get older, it helps more, but not at 20 months old now. Yeah, we're leaving soon. Yeah, like, heck, we are. Yeah, no, it doesn't usually work. So just follow through with action. You're doing it right. They will eventually learn. It's just a temporary. Everything with toddlers is so temporary. You know, whenever I'm hired by someone who has a toddler, a 2-year-old that's a real terror, but they hire me with their older kids, they hardly even ever talk about the toddler. And I'll say, oh, do you want, and I'll just say this, I'll ask them this so I can tell you this. I'll say, do you want to talk about the toddler? And they go, nah, they're just crazy, because they've already survived 1 or 2 toddlers. So they understand the toddler years, it's not a time to reason with your kids, because there is no reasoning there. They don't make sense yet. They're just forming. What are you smirking at?
No, I'm just, when you said that it's not really going to help with the transition if you warn it, I'm just envisioning their little heels digging in even more.
Well, they actually, yeah, they do. Because you get that look. I remember my son, and I knew, because I'd say, we're going to be leaving soon. And he'd just look at me like this blank look. And I thought, oh, I'm in for it. And I would even warn whoever I was around, by the way, he's going to be screaming in about 2 minutes. But I was laughing.
Okay, next question is Anya from Russia. Can you please elaborate with examples on how to connect with each stage from toddler to teen?
Ooh, toddler to teen. Toddler's all about play in their world, play in their world, not yours. And then the school age, same thing, play in their world. Actually, it's the same through all the ages. The difference is with teenagers, don't force yourself on them. You show an interest in what they're doing. Oh, that looks like a fun game there. And just hang around and wait till you're invited. That's the difference. Every other time you can invite yourself. Hey, can I play too? Whatever they're doing, try and do that. It's all around them and their interests. That's the key. Is a lot of parents think, well, I'm bored with that. And then find something you can enjoy. Like my son loved racing games and those ones shoot 'em up around. This when he was a teenager, those, I don't know what it's called, Grand Theft Auto stuff. And I hate all that stuff, and I hate it. I can't do racing games. I'm always going off a cliff or hitting a wall. So we found Guitar Hero. And I could actually sort of do that a little bit. So we ended up having fun. So I never pretended that I enjoyed doing his stuff when he was a teenager, but I always found something that I did enjoy Guitar Hero. And then let them when they're teenagers, let them kick you out when they're done with you too. It's all on their terms. Sorry about that. It's just the way it is.
You and I had DDR.
We had DDR. Now DDR is Dance Dance Revolution, and I think I discovered it first. I was at an arcade, and I think I was doing it when you kids were little. And I started doing that, it's the platform where it lights up when your feet are supposed to go. And I used to teach aerobics. I was really into that. And it was all footwork, right? So I just loved it. And then she was a dancer, so she loved it. We loved it so much that rather than go to the arcade all the time, we bought the mats. And we do it every morning for ages. We go down the basement before school and we do DDR.
I literally remember waking up early to do it in the morning.
And we'd go down there. We had a blast. She was a teenager. We had a blast. We were always friends though, like girls, or maybe it's a little bit different with girls. Boys tend, like for a mom to connect with a son, if you don't play sports or do video games, or, it was harder because we didn't have the same interests, whereas my daughter and I always kind of had the same interests. So it was easier to connect. And that can happen with boys too, I guess. But I didn't like video games and I don't like heavy metal music. And that was all my son's world. I learned how to like the video games. And now I still listen to Slipknot, NWA, all that stuff at the gym, headbanging music, because he inspired me. Because I opened my mind to it. That's the thing. You got to open your mind to what they're doing. You might actually find you enjoy it. I'm not stubborn. I have an open mind. I'm always trying to find new things and I get excited by new stuff. So I actually really like that music now. But he's still selective. To this day, he's 35. He still inspires me with music. I just discovered Falling in Reverse. He told me about this, that Ronald guy or Ronnie. So now I really like that. He inspires me with music. Now I would never, if I hadn't had a son, who liked heavy metal music, I would probably still just be listening to Michael Bublé. Which Michael Bublé is great, don't get me wrong, and I do listen to him still. but mixed in with Slipknot. So go figure that one out.
Big Buble fans over here. How do you recommend dads connect with their teen girls?
Well, dads can always get a makeover. They can take them places, more about taking them where they want to go and you just sit and watch. They love that. They love that dad's willing to go and take them to get their nails done and dad might sit there and get a pedicure, stuff like that. They love that. And then you get a hug at the end of it maybe. So yeah, it's harder, I think, for dads to show interest. I hate shopping, by the way, and you're not big on it either. So we never shop to connect. But yeah, dads don't. But if a teenage girl knows that dad's just dragging along because he loves her so much, that in itself is connection.
I know I went through a real, very random avocado roll phase, and my dad took me out for avocado rolls all the time.
Yeah,
So,
she loved it.
that was a good way.
Yeah, food.
Yeah, I'm such a foodie. Like that is.
So it's not like they were sitting chatting about life's issues like she did with Mom,
but it comes out.
It comes out because they're sitting there eating, doing something that they enjoy. So yeah, they both love avocado sushi and they do that all the time.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Used to do brunch sushi.
Brunch, that's delicious.
It was really good. Okay, next question is Kelsey from the United States. 13-month-old girl hysterically crying and fighting during diaper changes and getting dressed since age of 8 months. We are consistent on routine. How do we fix this? Is our daughter acting this way due to wanting to be independent and feeling restrained?
Well, I don't think there's a lot of thought that goes into it. Sometimes they're feeding off your energy, so they're kind of having fun with you. Even though they're screaming, they might think it's kind of fun. But I'll tell you the difference in how I know this works and doesn't work is when I said to my kids from a very young age, I said, I'm changing your diaper. They knew 100% their diaper was going to be changed within a minute. It was going to happen. They started to figure it out and they didn't fight me anymore. Here's the interesting thing. Their dad would bargain with them, try and negotiate. He would say, okay, so if I get you a toy, here you go, here's a toy. And they would kick and scream. And I would literally get a cup of tea, lean in the doorway and watch the show because they would never have done that with me because they knew when I said something, I followed through. So, I was quiet. I don't talk to them while I'm doing it. I go real quiet when I'm taking charge. I just get real quiet and serious. No anger, none at all. It's just, I'm going to change your diaper. And then I follow through. Now the diaper might end up on their head or something. It might not be done well, but it's going to be done. So the kids learn from a very young age that when mom says what she means, what she says and says what she means. Whereas if you're not like that, you're more inclined to try and negotiate. And yeah, that's where they take charge. So if they're still doing it after all that time, chances are that might be it. Or they might just be more feisty and fighting you a bit more than other kids, but generally I've found that I've worked with tons of kids too, and they didn't fight me very much. And I've even had parents and daycare workers and that say, how do you do that? And I said, well, because I said I was going to change their diaper. Yeah, but they didn't move for you. And I said, yeah, I know, because I went through the war the first few times. So, but there was no anger. It was just, it's going to happen. So yeah, you're giving her a lot of power, and I think she's just running with it. That's my gut reaction. Or don't worry about it. She'll get over it. They're just babies still.
Can I also just give you credit for the fact that you did cloth diapers for both me and my brother?
Yeah. And we didn't use a dryer. So I hung it up in the backyard. We lived in Australia. But yeah, I used cloth nappies, they're called over there, cloth nappies. And they were terry. So they were very thick, terry toweling. They weren't like the thin ones in North America. They were thick. And when you have a newborn, and you put a giant, and they're folded up like in this big triangle, and they're so fat, and you put a newborn, they're like on a slant. Their head is way below their bum because they got this giant, you don't have different size nappies over there. They're just one size from basically 0 to 3 years old. You just fold it differently. So you can imagine how giant these things were. But yeah, I use cloth diapers. I'm very into all that homey stuff. I don't like, like I made all my own food. God, I hate cooking. But I made my food from scratch and everything. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had the time. Plus, I'm that way inclined. So it's just my way. It's not for everybody. It's just my way.
I'm just envisioning you holding us, but just by the diaper.
Pretty much. And those things were wicked. And also, this is kind of interesting, but in Australia, the toilets are like, they could suck down a mattress. I mean, they are so powerful. And I remember once your dad was in the bathroom and you had to like empty the poo out in the toilet. And he goes, uh-oh. And I go, what? And he goes, oh, I dropped it. And it flushed. Didn't even cough. This toilet just sucked that huge, gigantic terry towel nappy right down with it. Another funny story about that was when we moved back to Canada, my son was 15, my daughter was 10. And I kept warning them, by the way, the toilets in North America are useless. They're like, bloop, 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 bloop. You look at them the wrong way and they get cough and clogged. And so I said, be careful. Sure enough, his son put like a half a roll of toilet paper in there. And then I made him buy all the equipment. We had to get a snake and all that. And we were just cracking up. But yeah, so the toilets there are very wild. But you had to empty out the little plops and everything. Was messy, and then also because I put all the nappies out on the line, the sun bleached them all. So they were all like brand new all the time. Do you know what was so hot in summer there that when I was hanging up nappies, and I had a 2-bucket system going, so it was a lot of nappies when I did clean them. And I would hang them up. By the time I had like a whirly, like a circular clothesline. What are they called? Umbrella style ones. And by the time I hung up the last nappy, and I was fast at it too, the first ones were dry. Like, that's how hot it gets there. If it was windy and hot. Anyway, it's kind of funny. Enough about that. Next question.
Final question. So Maja from Croatia. Are your methods and teachings applicable to children with ADHD, hypersensitive children, and or gifted children?
That's where I learned all this. So, and my son was gifted. But remember I hate that word gifted. I think of it as they're just kind of freaks in a way. Like they're just kind of really good at thinking in a certain way. It doesn't mean that they're gifted in their personality or their heart or their soul or anything. It just means that their brain works differently. So yeah, I hate that word gifted. Anyway, I hated my son.
He's wonderful.
Oh, he's great. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I always said it's kind of a freaky thing to get. So, because I didn't want him to lead with that. I always told my kids, if you're born with a gift, like you're good looking or you're really smart, don't ever take credit for that. You didn't earn it. Take credit for how you treat people and, your achievements. Only take pride and credit in what you've earned, not in what you were just given. I was very strict about that. So that's why we never focused on his gift at all. But anyway, what was the question? I forgot.
Well, just are your methods applicable for children?
Oh, yeah. They're just about respect. It's about teaching accountability and teaching pride and high self-esteem. That's all I'm teaching here. The kids I worked with, I used to call them alphabet kids. They all had ADHD, WXYZ. That's where I learned all this. I didn't learn much with just my own 2 kids. Neither one of them had any what you call challenges or anything. And they were more low key. They weren't super active kids. So they were actually quite on the easier side, I would say. Because I think the reason I say that is because I worked with so many challenging kids. They were probably more just what you consider average kids, like in that their behavior was just, they started out just not really hyper or anything. But I worked with all those kids that were born hyper and did have issues. That's where I learned all this. Respect isn't secluded just for kids without challenges. That's especially for kids who do have challenges. They need it even more. So yeah, it's just about giving respect to get it. You got to earn this stuff though. You got to work for it. Put in the work. It's hard at first. It's hard getting respect, but maintaining it's a piece of cake right through the teen years.
Okay, that was it for questions.
Okay, we're all done then. I've got nothing else to add. It's not a topic I have a lot of passion about. Like what I mean is what to look out for when you're raising kids. There's no real hard issues to discuss right now. It's more just go with the flow, okay? Don't expect too much from your kids. If you have a neighbor who has kids who are perfectly behaved all the time and you've got a little terror who's running around ripping everything up, just say, yeah, well, that's just who he is. I mean, they're all different is what I'm saying. So just allow them to be who they are, but correct the bad behavior as you go along. It's only temporary when they're little. They can eventually learn how to control themselves. By the time they're 2.5 to 3, you can start to really see it. So thanks so much for joining us from Lisa and
Amy.
Amy, have a great day. Happy parenting. Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're ready to dive deeper, check out BratBusters.com to learn more about the behavior board, parenting courses, and private one-on-one coaching with Lisa. If you've enjoyed the show so far, we'd love it if you could take a moment to follow, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more parents just like you. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional advice. Lisa is a parenting coach, mom, and grandmother. She is not a licensed psychologist or counselor. Her services do not replace the care of psychologists or other healthcare professionals. For a full disclaimer, please visit BratBusters.com/disclaimer.